Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate. I hope you guys are spending this holiday season well. Haven't uploaded in a little bit, took a little bit of a mini holiday break, but I'm back. We're gonna do hot takes, but this time I'm gonna start with some hot takes on Reddit because I think some of them opened up some pretty good points of discussion. So the first one I saw is all about the new top 500 system. So let's start with that hot take first. I say hot take, but all I did was sort in the competitive Overwatch subreddit by controversial, and this is the one that showed up pretty much on top. The new top 500 system may be the worst change of all time. Kind of a bold statement, but let's see what they have here. Let's get the good out of the way fast. I like the search feature and scrolling. It makes trying to find specific people a lot easier. Time still gets wasted when I click on a profile and find out it's private, but overall searching for profiles have been way better. But that's not the main change this season. The new challenger score system has actually turned out worse than expected. Not only does it reward playtime too much, as was predicted when the system was first announced, but it sometimes doesn't even seem to make sense at all. Sometimes players will be ranked higher on the leaderboard despite having a lower rank and lower challenger score than the person below them. It has made rank and MMR feel completely meaningless. Friends leaderboards are particularly a mess. What used to be a good way of seeing how you compare with friends is now a seemingly random arrangement of your friends list and friends with 0 challenger score on the front page of your friends leaderboard. I think they should just immediately revert back to sorting by rank and keeping the quality of life improvements like the search box and scrolling. If they really don't want to lose the challenger system, then keep it only for competitive stadiums since it's completely different from the base game. So a little bit to unpack here. Okay, I totally understand why, if you're like a champion 1 player, it feels really bad that the only leaderboard available in the game is playtime 1. Now, mathematically, it's supposed to sort of like even itself out by the end. If you are a top champion player, it should be much easier to get enough challenger score and outpace someone who's like GM1 right now. But as it stands, there are some people who are really like low champion, they'd be champion 5, GM1, who is outranking a champion 2 player, and it feels really bad if you're in those shoes. Outside of the system, I want to ask the people who are in those ranks, I'm not a champion player, how is the matchmaking quality? Because the only defense I can give to this system right now, besides it feeling bad for the players, is that the match quality is hopefully better, because this is supposed to incentivize champion players to actually queue the game and stop camping the leaderboard and taking up all the slots. Like, leaderboard camping was bad, but now you're actually, hopefully champion players who may or may not be watching are actually queuing into other champion players who are actively queuing. That is like the biggest takeaway that people are avoiding. They're just looking at the how their rank shows up on the leaderboard instead of the actual match quality. I mean, both things can be important to a person, but match quality was something that people used to harp on all the time, and queue times as well. So I guess the two big things are, hopefully queue time for champion players is better because the champion players are actually queuing, and the match quality is better because it's full. I know I play with champions all the time in open queue, but open queue is such a small pool that you can get champion to masters player in that range. But I'm talking about the main game 5v5 people who are actively queuing. I guess that's like the biggest pro of this new system, of this grind set system, this system that rewards people for actively playing. Now, the cons, of course, is that it feels psychologically bad. You get hit by like 80 psychic damage when someone who is lower ranked than you gets higher than you so far on the grind leaderboard. It feels kind of bad if you are maybe a champion 2 player, for example, and then you're trying to outpace the GM1 grinder, but then the GM1 grinder ends up in your lobby because of like the max range, and then because there's a champion 2 player in the lobby, that Grandmaster 1 player is actually getting the same challenger score reward because it's based on the highest rank in the lobby. Now, if they lose, I think they do lose a bit more because it's based on that. But so as it stands, because it's taking it from the winner or the highest person in the lobby, it feels like not good. There's probably some better words I could do to articulate this, but I didn't really write anything down and I'm spitting from the top of my head. But like, I get that, and that's another valid point to bring up. I still think you should finish out the season and multiply it with the heat factor, because every week that goes on, I think it's supposed to increase, like the more points you get to make people play more near the end of the season to continue grinding. It does feel bad to reward for playtime, so I'm thinking maybe for the next season you either scrap it completely, give it a fair shot. If people really still hate it, then you can start dialing back bringing it back to an older system. But then again, then it's gonna bring up. Here's the thing. This system was brought to solve some problems, but it brought new problems. And if we go back to the old system, the old problems will still come back with like leaderboard campers and match quality and queue times being long again. So it's like you solve it's the lesser of two evils. You got to pick your poison here. That's the bigger takeaway. I think one final thing I'll add is that what they should do is maybe separate like a score-based system with an actual person who was ranked the highest, so you can have two filters, so people who are champion 1 can be recognized as champion 1, and not have like being rank 1 challenger, like that top 500 symbol, overtake what a champion 1 is, because champion 1 is inherently much more prestigious than seeing a 1 on your profile, even though it may not seem that way to like a player who never has been in this rank. Any sort of higher elo player or competitive grinder knows that's true, and it feels kind of bad when, you know, Jobless Jim, who's in GM1, is rank 2 versus champion 1, you know, Korean Master 5000. That could be arranged, swapping those around, having a separate leaderboard, separate filter. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. That was a big one. Let's move on. Okay, in no particular order, my hot take is that Freya's take aim is one of the worst abilities to be on the receiving end of. Once the bolt appears on your screen, you are marked for death. Your life is no longer in your hands, and all you can do is wait for your death or pray your supports notice. Yeah, that is definitely not the worst abilities to be on the receiving end of. The worst is the worst ability to be on the receiving end of is the one that kills you immediately, such as a Widowmaker headshot, right? Freya's take aim, at least now, maybe this was written a while ago because I haven't done hot takes in a while, it used to do 130 damage. Now it only does 110. And even so, back then, 130, a single, you know, mark for death, you have to get hit by 2 of them, and any sort of lick of healing would probably save you, and any sort of person turning around, maybe a Zarya bubbling or any sort of support ability could keep you alive. There's a delay before it pops, so it doesn't really feel like one of the worst abilities to be on the receiving end of. Maybe the high frequency of it makes it feel bad, but in a vacuum, it's definitely not. Hot take: the map voting and hero ban system needs to change. Excuse me. Map voting is so random. I legit had a 7 actual good map versus a 3 Nambani vote yesterday that went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in 1 second and then stopped dead in Nambani. There must be some shenanigans going on behind the scenes. No, that's just math and probability. If there was 7 votes and 3 in the other, it was just 70% versus 30%. Sometimes you just roll the 30%. It is what it is. So there's definitely no shenanigans there. The ban system is infuriating beyond belief sometimes. I like playing Sombra and Doomfist from time to time. Guess what? They get banned 9 out of 10 times I want to play them. Solution: get 1 to 2 games a day where you can leave before the game starts without penalty, or maybe pick your character before queuing and that character has a less chance of getting banned or something. And then for the map vote solution, fix the randomness or simply get rid of it. I'm quite tired of playing King's Row as well. I get it, it's iconic, but it has gotten overplayed for me and I'm tired of seeing it get 8 or more votes every single time. Overrated. Thanks for the content, KarQ. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Well, to unpack, I mentioned your hot take, the first part with the shenanigans behind, that's just probability. Your ban system being infuriating for you as a Doom and Sombra player, understandable that you can't play the hero that you enjoy the most. The solution to get 1 to 2 games, I disagree with that. Do not do that. The only way that you can bypass that is that you have to force vote heroes in that specific role. Like if you're queuing DPS and you want to play Sombra, you should be queuing up 2 DPS bans that are not Sombra to add weight to the other, because you can only have 2 bans in 1 role at most on either side, depending on what they pick. So what you're supposed to do as a Sombra player is pre-hover a Sombra, say I'm playing Sombra, don't ban her, tell it to your team, type it to them, so then they don't ban it, and then you have to add DPS weight to the pool. So right now, good bans are like Bastion, Vendetta, then you can probably get a Sombra game in. And same for Doomfist, just add, if you're queuing tank and role queue and you want to play Doom, just ban other tanks. Like good bans are like Diva right now, sometimes Zarya. There you go. That's the solution to get the hero out of the ban system. For like the things that frustrate you, it solves many other problems and annoyingness for other players that you should definitely not get rid of either system. Do not get rid of map voting or a ban system. Those are one of the 2 best systems to be introduced to the game. But yeah. Your last part with I'm tired of playing King's Row, that's understandable. I realize every time it shows up in my pool, it does get voted in quite often. There are some maps I haven't played in forever, like Pariso. Not to say I don't miss them, but my suggestion a long time ago was that there should be a question mark map like a random map and people vote for that, it can actually roll randomly again, and that would be kind of fun because I kind of like, you know, gambling a little bit in that sense. Makes it feel like old Overwatch pre-map voting where you could actually just load it up to a random map, right? And this is when people don't like all three choices, they pick the question mark one, and then it reveals it if it gets chosen after the fact. But yeah. Next. Hot take, Reaper's fade animation looks incredibly goofy, and I'm surprised I've never seen anyone talk about it. I remember the times of Overwatch 1 when I saw the cinematic with the Reaper, when he used to fade to become a black smoke and then reappear again, and then I noticed his animation in-game for the first time and I thought it was a bug. Why does he T-pose? He probably can't just be black smoke for clarity issues, but there's so many ways to make this ability look in character. It's so silly that they even changed it in the cinematic. It's been like this for so many years, I've never seen anybody talk about it, and I feel like I'm alone at that. You might be alone with that because I've never heard anybody else talk about that until today after reading this hot take. To me, it doesn't look very goofy, and it's pretty, for visual and game clarity, it is pretty obvious when he goes into that form because his feet are no longer on the ground. He's a wisp and he's moving. Maybe they could like have like an animation sweep up and maybe actually make him swirl around like an actual wisp for a little bit, but then that would also be a little bit distracting. So they're kind of settled into that medium right now, and I don't know, people are used to it, and I don't really think it feels like a non-issue to kind of bring up, that's all. Hot take, 6v6ers are hey, listen, I'm playing 6v6 open queue mostly these days. Anyways, 6v6ers are delusional, and this is coming from someone who started playing in Season 2 of Overwatch 1. 6v6 allows for no dynamic gameplay. The tanks are forced to shield bot, otherwise they blow up because they're made of paper mache and die for one mistake, and the DPS are forced to either flank or be shield breakers and have to play perfectly since they're often not getting healed because supports are forced to heal bot the tanks, otherwise they fall over and often aren't able to use their utility offensively because they need to save their impactful cooldowns for defensive plays rather than making the dynamic choice of use of their utility offensively or defensively. Okay, a little bit to unpack there. There's actually like a few things I actually agreed with in there, but not all of it. So, 6v6ers are delusional. Well, not all of them. I don't think I'm delusional. I've always been a proponent of play what you enjoy, but there are people who, I know who you're referencing, the people who are like, it's 6v6 or die, it's 6v6 or nothing, this is the main game mode. Like the people who are just annoying and over the top about it are what you're talking about, saying that it's objectively the better. Well, there's pros and cons of 5v5 and 6v6 to both, and then the people who are delusional are thinking 6v6 is like perfect and it's everything better than 5v5. That's not true. Next part, you said 6v6 allows for no dynamic gameplay. What do you mean by that? Because you have an extra variable on both sides of the team. An extra player on both ends means there's more combo synergies, more things, more abilities, and more interactions happening on a game-to-game basis. So in essence, there are much more multipliers and factors to have more dynamic gameplay. But I feel like people's definition of dynamic gameplay definitely changes. So at least in my definition of dynamic gameplay, more variables equals more things happening, more dynamicness. Anyways, tanks are forced to shield bot. That is incorrect. I actually feel like Rhine barely gets played in my games. Rhine is pretty frequent, but it's a lot of off-tanking. Lots of Zarya, lots of Roadhogs, tons of Wrecking Ball, lots of D.Va. D.Va gets banned a lot right now too. Like your tanks are not forced to shield bot by any capacity, so that part is just completely false. They're not made of paper mache. This is just how much HP tanks have. They still have 400 or 500 HP for a lot of the heroes. Some of them are still at 600. Your DPS are either forced to flank or be shield breakers. I mean, that's pretty much your two options in either 5v5 or 6v6. Both, you either flank or you shield breakers, or you try to shoot somebody who's like, not in front of you. You basically went 2 out of the 3 options, and that's pretty normal. They have to play perfectly since they're not often getting healed. That part, they are not getting healed as much depending on your comp, is actually true because you might be used to 5v5 now, and having 2 supports taking care of now an extra tank does mean there may be less resources given to the DPS, so it may be true unless you're getting maybe a Mercy service or a Zen, or Zen can have 2 Harmony orbs, maybe a Wu Yang thing. That supports are forced to heal bot the tanks, otherwise they fall over. We're not forced to, but it's definitely more incentivized in 6v6. I agree, I'm a support player. I enjoy Baptiste way more in 6v6 because I'm able to AoE heal more so than playing Ana. Single target healers feel a little bit worse for sure. So you're saying less dynamic because they have to save their impactful cooldowns for defensive plays rather than making the dynamic choice of using their utility offensively or defensively. Well, even so, maybe there is a higher frequency of using your impactful cooldowns defensively, but the better player still recognizes when it's still the better option to use your stuff offensively. Plus, you're thinking of just on a nade where you have to choose between defense or offense with it mostly, but there are abilities that are just strictly defense anyways, and there are some abilities that are strictly offense for supports, right? I'm trying to think right now. If I'm thinking Baptiste, my stuff is mostly defense anyways. I guess the only thing I think of is the perk where it gives you attack speed on the regen burst versus automated healing. Automated healing is more heal body, then the other one is more offense, so I guess you're kind of shoehorned into another perk, but even so you can still get away with it because you can run triple support, which solves that problem a little bit, right? So there's some flexibility in that sense, and you're not actually shoehorned into specifically heal botting and being defensive the whole time, especially when things open up. Remember, if you play super offensive and you get a pick with the Roadhog, or you know, your Sojourn gets an early pick, they're not going to be dishing as much damage to you. Like, the game is so dynamic already with so many variables that if there's less damage incoming because you got rid of one of their players already, you don't have to actually use your stuff defensively off the rip. So in any case, all in all, the take is you know, I'm like 90% disagreeing with it, except for like a few parts. Anyways, hot take. Saying that feeling frustrated from playing against specific heroes is a skill issue is stupid. Overwatch is about having fun, and you don't have to get better at the game or be good. Not a hot take. It's frustration does not equal skill issue. Annoyingness does not equal skill issue. That's like saying tank players who are frustrated or annoyed at Ana's nade and sleep and annoyed at Sombra hacking them is a skill issue. No, it's just annoying. That's it. It's just annoying. And me as a support player, like, I'm just annoyed at Freja sniping me across the map and annoyed at, you know, Widowmaker just one-shotting me across the map. Your next part, Overwatch is about having fun. True. You don't have to get better at the game or be good. True. That goes for any games. You can definitely just enjoy games casually. Hot take, control should be 5 rounds as discussed in this video. Matches should be longer where possible to reduce the impact of random factors on the outcome. No player should think I could have won if XYZ. The matches should last long enough to ensure everyone knows who the worst team is. You know, I actually wouldn't be opposed for control going back to 5 rounds, first to 3, in ranked specifically. I know it feels exactly the same as quick play. There's no distinction between them. Although when you play quick play like any other mode, it's just one side. You can keep quick play first to 2 in there, but I do think competitive could go back to first to 3. Some of them could get exceedingly long, but I'm personally not opposed to that, and I'm not sure how the rest of the community feels. Next, hot take. Payload is the best game mode because it has non-static objectives that require different strategies at different chokes. You spelled chokes very interestingly. And that needed flexibility adds layers of skill expression that other static game modes do not. I can understand that perspective. Like, because the thing is always moving, you know, you do have to have different strategies depending on what part of the map you're on, but that goes for a lot of other maps too. Same with push. Push maps have different structures and map stuff you have to use depending on where the bot is. Control and flashpoint maybe not as much because things are static, sure, but like depending on who's winning or losing or controlling the point, like there's going to be different strategies in terms of holding the choke, how things open up as they attack in. I think both are pretty good at expressing skill, but I understand the argument for it. That's where Payload ends up having what I call like heat zones, heat maps, areas where like there's high frequency of fights because that's the most optimal time for defenders to drop down or attackers to go up and, you know, make their move. So even though you say it's a non-static objective, people end up fighting around the same spots anyways, no matter where the objective is, like in a rough general area, if you know what I mean. Vendetta's shift, also her whirlwind spin, knocking down tanks is weird and feels out of place for such a mobile dive DPS hero. It feels like Genji dash knocking down a Rhine pin. I think this was an idea to kind of have some counterplay in this matchup for her. She's one of the tankier DPSs, so maybe not so much a great comparison to the nimble Genji cyborg ninja kind of fantasy, but I feel like if you are countercharging the tank, you are actually going to lose as Vendetta because the tank has a much bigger HP pool. 2 people are down, you are much faster to kill than the other person, so this is actually one way to kind of deal with it. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I think Doom losing the punch matchup feels kind of strange. I feel like his stun should override it, and you should be able to punch Vendetta out of the whirlwind dash. But then if you do that for that interaction, then the whole point of the counter charge is kind of like weird. I mean, I think she would be fine without it too. Like, don't get me wrong. I answered this hot take, but I do think she doesn't need a counter charge in her kit at all at this point. So you know what? Not a hot take. Vendetta shift knocking down tanks is weird and feels out of place. Just scrap that from her kit, and I still think she's good and still has a lot of strengths and glaring weaknesses. Okay, that's it for a return episode. Please leave some more hot takes in the comments, and Happy New Year. Okay, bye.